Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into some really influential research by sociologist Annette Lareau. We're going to look at how parenting styles can pass social class advantages from one generation to the next. And here's the thing, it often happens completely under the radar.
So let's kick things off with a question I'm sure a lot of parents have asked themselves. What's the best way to raise a successful kid? Should their schedule be packed to the brim with activities? Soccer, piano, the whole 9 yards. Or should they just have the freedom to be a kid?
All right, so here's our game plan. We're going to start by looking at the lives of two really different boys. Then we'll get into the two main parenting styles that Lareau identified. After that, we'll see what the consequences of those styles are, the entitlement versus constraint idea. We'll also touch on how race and class fit into all this. And finally, we'll zoom out and see how this all contributes to what Lareau calls invisible inequality.
All right, let's get right into it. To really understand this, we need to meet two 10-year-old boys from Lareau's study. Their lives, they couldn't be more different. They really paint a picture of two completely separate Americas.
So first up, meet Alexander Williams. He comes from a middle-class family. His parents are a corporate manager and a trial lawyer. And on the other side of the coin, we have Harold McAllister. He lives with his mom and his siblings in a public housing project apartment. So right off the bat, you can see the contrast.
And when you look at a typical day for these two boys, wow, it's night and day. Alexander's life is, it's a very full schedule, completely organized by his parents. We're talking piano, choir, soccer, you name it. Meanwhile, Harold's day is much more free-flowing. He's got a ton of unstructured time to just hang out with his cousins and the neighborhood kids, organizing his own fun.
Okay, so Alexander's upbringing, it's the textbook example of a parenting style that Lareau calls concerted cultivation.
So what is concerted cultivation? Well, it's this idea that childhood is basically a training ground. Think about it. It makes sense for middle-class families. The parents often work in professional jobs where things like reasoning, questioning authority, and having a packed resume are super important for success. So naturally, they feel like it's their job to actively cultivate their child's talents and skills to get them ready for that same kind of world.
So, let's look at the key features here. We're talking about a life dominated by organized activities. Family life kind of revolves around them. There's a huge emphasis on using language, on reasoning things out. And maybe most importantly, kids are actually taught to question adults and negotiate for what they want. It can lead to a really busy, almost frenetic pace of life for everyone.
And the why behind all this is fascinating. Just listen to what Alexander's mom says. For her, sports aren't just about fun. They're about learning to be competitive, how to lose gracefully, and picking up crucial leadership and teamwork skills. It's all part of the cultivation plan.
Okay, so that's one world. Now let's flip over to Harold McAllister's life, which is shaped by a totally different philosophy.
Lareau calls this style the accomplishment of natural growth. And again, it often comes from the parents' own experiences. In many working-class or poor families, the world of work emphasizes respecting authority and knowing your place. So the thinking here is different. It's not about actively cultivating. It's about providing the essentials, love, food, safety, and then trusting that the child will grow and thrive naturally.
And what does this look like in practice? Well, kids have way more free time. They're not in a bunch of organized activities. They tend to have really deep connections with their extended family, like cousins and aunts. And the parent-child relationship is different too. It's more about parents giving clear directions and children following them. The boundaries between adults and kids are really distinct.
Okay, this table really lays it all out, doesn't it? When you see them side by side, the differences just pop. On one side, you've got parents actively fostering and assessing every little talent. On the other, it's about caring for the child and letting them grow. Look at daily life, orchestrated activities versus just hanging out. And the language, wow, reasoning and negotiation versus clear directives. It's a perfect snapshot of how deeply class shapes the whole rhythm of family life.
Okay, so here's where it gets really important. These aren't just two different ways to spend a Saturday. These two very different childhoods end up creating two totally different ways of dealing with the outside world, especially with big institutions like schools or even the doctor's office. The result of concerted cultivation is what Lareau calls an emerging sense of entitlement. And that doesn't mean being spoiled. It means these kids act like they have a right to ask questions, to manage their interactions, to get what they need. The key word here is questioning. On the flip side, natural growth leads to an emerging sense of constraint. These kids are less likely to speak up or try to change things. They're more likely to just accept what people in authority tell them. The key word here is deference.
Now you might be wondering, okay, where does race fit into all this? It's a great question. Alexander Williams, the boy with the busy schedule, is black, and his parents were absolutely concerned about how racism would impact his life.
They were very direct about it. They taught him how to navigate a world that, as his mom put it, sees color first. But, and this is crucial, his dad made it clear that he should never use discrimination as an excuse for not giving his absolute best.
And here is one of Leroux's most powerful findings. Despite the reality of race, when it came to the actual practices of child-rearing, the day-to-day stuff, social class was the bigger factor. She found that middle-class black families and middle-class white families were using concerted cultivation, and likewise, poor and working-class families, both black and white, were using the natural growth approach.
So let's tie this all together. How does all of this add up to what Leroux calls invisible inequality?
Well, it's kind of like a chain reaction. It starts with these different parenting approaches which are tied to class. Those approaches build very different sets of skills in kids for dealing with authority. So then, when these kids interact with institutions like schools, the middle-class kids just feel more comfortable, they're more effective. Over time, they gain all these small but cumulative advantages. And what's the end result? Social class gets passed down almost seamlessly to the next generation.
When you boil it all down, it's this: the skills that get taught through concerted cultivation, things like negotiation, questioning authority, just being comfortable talking to adults as peers, those are the exact skills that our major institutions, like schools and workplaces, value and reward. It's a perfect example of what sociologists call the transmission of cultural capital. It's an advantage that's not about money, but about knowing the rules of the game.
And that leaves us with a really big, kind of tough question to chew on. If the biggest advantages in life start invisibly, right there at home, if the playing field is already tilted by the time a kid even walks out the front door, what does the promise of equal opportunity really mean?